Hashem, today's Daf Yomi is Chullin Tez Zayin. This is the Daf Yomi that we're recording in advance of Shabbos Kodesh, and we're recording it on Friday. And we're going to start on 6 lines from the bottom on 15b. But the Gemara said that Rebbe draws a distinction between something that was attached to the ground always versus something that was detached and then attached. And if it's something that was always attached to the ground, then even after the fact, even with the Eved, the Shlita is disqualified. Or if it was detached and then attached, then we're going to say that after the fact that the valid Shlita. And the Gemara asks the question, Umana Temran the Shanilan Be Mechubar Meikaro Atoloshu B'Sof Chibro. How do we know that Rebbe himself draws such a distinction between something that was in fact attached initially to something that was removed and then attached? The Tanya, the proof for it is from a brisa, shochet b'muchani. Let's say somebody slaughters with a muchani is like from the word machine, like in Latin. So somebody slaughters with a machine, shlitaso kshira. Then we're going to say it's a valid shlita. It's a valid slaughter. If somebody slaughters with something attached to the ground, shlitaso kshira. It's a valid shlita. No, it's in the course of a shachar. But let's say there's a knife that you stuck into the wall and use it to slaughter. Shlitaso kshira. It's kosher. So let's say you have a rock jutting out of the wall, or you have a reed coming up from the bottom, vishachapo, and you slaughter with it, shlitaso psula, then it's disqualified. So we have an internal contradiction in the brisa, because first part of the brisa says that if you slaughter with something attached to the ground, then it's going to be kosher. But the second part of the brisa says that if there's a reed coming up from the ground and you slaughter with it, it's a shlita, it's disqualified. So we're on the top of 16a. How do we explain this contradiction? Kashin ha'adad. It's seemingly an apparent contradiction. Alav shma mina. So we see from here, shani be'mechuber meikaro ta'olashul b'sof chibro shma mina. So we see from here that there's a distinction between something that was attached initially and always, which is going to be never good according to Rebbe, versus something that was detached and is now being reattached, where Rebbe says after the fact is okay. So we're on 16a, 2 lines from the top, where the Gemara now asks the question. The Gemara looks at this statement. Amar Mar. So hold on 1 second here. Amar Mar Shochet b'muchani shlitas kshera. Somebody slaughters with a machine, it's going to be a kosher shlita. Mar says Vatanya shlitas psula. But we have another source which says if you slaughter with a machine, it's disqualified. So how do we explain the contradictory sources? The Gemara says Lo kasha. It depends on the type of the machine. So the saran de pachra is Rashi says this is a wheel of pottery makers, and they have a wheel that they turn when they make when they make out the clay. And then there's the saran de maya. So pachra, Rashi says, is cheres, is pottery. And so therefore it's kosher because a person has to spin the potter's wheel. But if it's a saran de maya, if it's a wheel that's run by water, that's going to be disqualified because the water is what's causing the wheel to turn. And this shlita, therefore, is not coming from the strength of a man. And so therefore, since we're going to learn in the Mishnah and Daf Lamed Aleph that if the animal falls down and is slaughtered, it's disqualified because you have to do it. So therefore, since it's the force of the water, it's not considered the koach of the man. So therefore, it's not kosher. So the Gemara says the same alternative explanation. That both sources, the one that says it's okay by a machine and one says not okay, both of them are dealing with a wheel that's powered by water. The distinction is how far removed from the situation is the actions of man. In the first case, we're going to say it's okay, where you tied that when you remove that, basically there's water coming to flow and turn the wheel, and you remove like a piece of wood that was blocking the water, and then immediately it turns. So that's going to be considered like it came from a man, and it's going to be kosher. But koach sheni, where it's not a kosher shlita, is after the wheel turned the first time, and now it turns the second time, this is going to be considered like it's coming from koach sheni, and it's not going to be effective. Meaning to say that it's not the first go around. So now the Gemara says, and this is similar to that which Rav Papa taught, who said, "Haiman de kafte lechaver." Let's say a man tied up his friend, ba'ashkel bitga demaya umeis chayev. And then what happened was, after he tied him up, he arranged it that a gush of water should come and bitka demaya umis, that the water will come over him and he's going to die. So basically, Rashi says in this case, what's going on is shehifna mayim lavorla v'niyaru. He caused the water to go over the man and drown him. So in that case, he's going to be liable because as though he actually killed him. And so that's like his weapon. Rashi says that's not indirection. That's not indirect. That if you tie up your friend and then you basically cause the water to fall into him, you're liable. My timer, gire di day who da hanibe, because we say it's like his arrows that came upon the man. But that statement of Rav Papa, where if you cause water to fall on somebody who can't get away, you're considered murder. Hanimili b'koach rishon. That's only where it was the initial force, where Rashi says you tied him next to the river, and so then since he made a hole and allowed the water to come through, it was immediate. But it would be called sheni that you tied him far away, and even though he made the hole and he caused the water to go there, since it's farther away, he's going to be exempt because then we're going to consider it indirect. So Yasef Rav Achorei de Rebbe Chia Kamei de Rebbe. The Yasef Rebbe the Kamer. So Rebbe taught Minayin. You see how beautiful it is. Rav is sitting behind. You see the generation. Rav is sitting behind Rebbe Chia. That means Rebbe Chia was senior to Rav, and Rebbe Chia was sitting behind Rebbe. That means to say that Rebbe was senior to Rebbe Chia. So Rebbe Chia was sitting in front of him, but it means that Rebbe was in charge. The Ka'amar Minayin l'shlita shehu betalish. How do we know that the shlita, that the slaughter has to come with something that's detached from the ground? Because it says, that Avram took a knife to slaughter his son. So, and that proves that it was detached from the ground. So the Gemara asks, how is this a proof? Says, how can you learn out the proof from here, Rav? Says Rebbe Chia. So he says, he says, the reason, meaning to say, he's saying something that's not correct. Like if you write a vav on a piece of wood, and it's basically not going to be a straight line because the wood is has a lot of holes in it, so you can't write a vav on it because of the holes in the wood, the grooves, and so therefore it's not smooth. And so therefore, Rebbe Chia, who says, so basically, in this context, Rebbe Chia is saying that Rebbe's position, which states that it needs to be detached from the ground, is not correct, because Rebbe Chia is of the position, Rashi points out, Rebbe Chia is of the position who says that shchita is okay even if it's attached to the ground. So he basically is rejecting Rebbe's proof by saying it's like a vav that's written on a board, which is not a smooth thing, and it's not correct. Gemara says, but what are you talking about? Didn't Rebbe cite a pasuk? So the Gemara says, no, the Kra Zerusa the Avram Kamashma. The pasuk is not teaching us that you need to slaughter with a knife that's attached on the ground. It's teaching us just about how careful Avram was to do a mitzvah. That Avram was sensitive and he was careful. Maybe he's not going to find a sharp object there, even that's attached to the ground, and so he brought with him a knife. So now the Gemara continues. Amar Rava Pshito, Rav says, obvious to me, Taosh or Besof Chibro, Linyan Avodas Kochavim, have a Taosh. So Rav says it's obvious to me that if something was detached and then you attached it with respect to idolatry, we're going to say that it's considered detached. What does this mean? Because we learned, Rashi says in Avodah Zarah, that if somebody worships the mountains, those mountains can never be prohibited because they're always attached to the ground. It says Elohim Harim, and not the mountains are their gods. But that's only by a case where the mountain is attached initially. But if it was detached and then you made a man-made mountain, then you can prohibit it. The idolater can prohibit it by worshiping it. Also, like you say, if an idolater bows down to his own house, he can make it prohibited. And if you're going to say, if you would say that the house can't be prohibited, that the house can't be prohibited because it's attached to the ground, we would say Elohim Harim Harim Elohim. We would say that under those circumstances, it can be prohibited because it's not going to be considered the mountains themselves are not their God. So basically, once it becomes attached to it, it could become prohibited because it was not always attached. But the question is, with respect to Hechsher Zrayim, that's going to be a Machokas Tanaim. What's Hechsher Zrayim? This relates to something that we've been discussing the last few days, that seeds, in order to be able to become Tamei or food items, they need to have water come on it. You need to want the water to come on it. If you don't want the water to come on it, then it's not able to make it tamei. Also, it needs to be detached from the ground. So, or else the water going on it does not make it hukshar l'kabel tumah, does not make it capable of becoming tumah. But what about the case where it was detached and then reattached? So this we're going to say is a machokas tanaim, detanam, because we learned in the Mishnah in Machshirin, hakofe kara al hakosa. Let's say somebody turns over a bowl on the wall, bishvil shetudach, and he does it so that the plate, that the bowl should be washed away by the water. Harei zebechul yutan. We're going to say that is going to be considered to fall into the category of ki yutan, and so anything that was in the bowl, since he wanted the water to go onto the bowl, so therefore anything that was in the bowl that the water fell on is going to fit within the category of chiyutan, and the food it dripped on is going to be capable of becoming tamei. B'shvil shelo yokal kosel, but if he does it so that the wall itself does not get ruined, he doesn't want the water to go onto the wall, then it's not b'chuyutin. So the Gemara says, let's analyze this Mishnah from Machshirin. Hagufa kasha. So Rav says this itself is contradictory. Amrish b'shvil shedudach. You said so that the bowl itself becomes washed off and clean. So that implies if you want the bowl to be washed, but not the wall, if you want the wall to be washed, it's not considered b'chiyusan. And it says if you put it up there so that the wall does not get damaged by the water, then it's not b'chiyutin. But the inference from that is, but if you want the wall itself to be washed, I raise the b'chiyutin. So what is the law with respect to if you want the wall to be washed, and it falls on the utensils, does it make it hukshar kabel tumah? Hold on 1 second. So the Gemara says, Amar Rabbi Elazar, Tabra, Misha Shana Zu, Shana Zu. The two parts of the Mishnah are not connected. It's a contradictory. Rav Papa says, no, Kula Chadatanahi. So Rav says, no, we can connect them. How? So, Habakosel Ma'ara, Habakosel Binyan. One is the wall of a cave, and one is the wall of a building. This is how we read it. Hakofe ka'ara kosa. Let's say b'shvil shetudach. Let's say you turn over a bowl on the wall so that the bowl shall be washed off. And since you wanted the water to hit the bowl, it's going to be b'chiyutan. Which implies that if you want the wall to be washed off, then it's not in b'chiyutan. But when do we say this? When do we say this? Because Samara, that's with the wall of a cave. The wall of a cave, because it's always attached to the ground. It's mechubar karka. But if it's the wall of a building, then if you wanted the wall itself to be washed off, since it was detached from the ground initially, we're going to say it's within the category of the chiyutan. So therefore, that's a distinction between whether or not something was attached always or detached and then attached. So now by Rava asked the following question. So he says, Talish ubesof chibro. What about our Mishnah? Talish ubesof chibro inyan shlita mai. What about something that was attached and then attached with respect to shlita? Can you use it for shlita? So the Gemara says, Tashma. Let's bring a proof from the brayso we cited before. Hayatzur yotze min hakosel. If you had a rock coming attached to the wall, or a stick coming up from the ground, and you slaughter with it, psula, it's going to be disqualified. What are we talking about? And what are we talking about in this case? So anyway, so we see from here that since it's coming out from the wall, and the wall wasn't always attached to the ground, so obviously, in that case, it's disqualified. So even something that was detached and then attached is going to be disqualified. So Gemara says, no, no, it's the wall of a cave, so it was always attached to the ground, so it's not a proof. And again, because it's similar to the next case, which is that the reed was coming up from the ground. So here too, we're talking about a wall where the stone was always attached to it. The Gemara gives another attempt. Tashma, no, it's sakin because of a shachapa. Let's say somebody stuck a knife in the wall and slaughtered with it, then it's kosher. So we see from here that even though it's attached to the ground, since it was originally detached, it's kosher. So the Gemara says, no, that's not a proof. Shani sakin de lo mevatale. No, a knife is different because the person always intends to use that knife, even when it's reattached to the ground. So that's why it's going to be kosher. But let's say something will become batal, become nullified vis-a-vis the ground. So that's not a proof yet. Tashma b'mechubar l'karka shlitasuk share. The brayso said something is attached to the ground, it's kosher. So this proves that something was detached and then attached, it's kosher. Gemara says, no, Dilma Pirusha come farashlai. My mechubar l'karka sakin delom mevatli. The Gemara says, maybe that's just explaining that specific case. What do we mean when it means that it's attached to the ground, it's kosher? The case of a knife that you reattach, because that's not nullified. So the Gemara didn't answer this question. Amar Mar, no, it's sakin l'kos of a shachapa. Let's say you stick a knife in the wall and you slaughter with it shlitasok shira. So Amar Avanan, Amar Shmuel, when do we say it's a kosher shlita? When the knife is above and the neck of the animal is below, and you basically bring the animal's neck up to the bottom of the knife. But if you put the animal's neck on top of the knife, that's not kosher. Chashin and shema yidros. We're going to be concerned that you might, do hadrasa, which is the pressing down of the animal. Gemara says, but didn't we say in the brayso either way it's kosher, whichever is above and whichever is below? So Amarav Zvid, no, the way we have to explain it is with Stad and Katani. That we have to read it as two separate halachos. That if the knife is below and the neck of the animal is above, b'tolosh, then it's okay if the knife is not attached. If the knife is above and the animal's neck is below, then it's even okay b'mechubar if it's attached. Rav Papa gives a different answer. When do we say that if the knife is above and the animal is below, it's kosher? That's ba'ofa dekoyal. That is a very light bird, so we don't have to be worried about pressing. Since we're talking about whether or not you could slaughter with a sharp reed like a like a bamboo. That now Rav Chisda said that there were 5 teachings about this in the Brisa. He didn't have AI, he didn't have Safaria, but he goes through all of his Brisos in his mind, and he says 5 halachos about a kruma shalkana. What are they? Number 1, Ein shoch, the mekach, you can't slaughter with it. Ein malamba, you can't use it as to do a bris. You can get a splinter with it. It can be dangerous. Ein mechatchem ba'basar, you can't use it to chop meat because some of the wood might go into the meat. Ein mechatzim b'shinayim, you can't use it as a toothpick. Ein mekanchem ba, you can't, after you go to the bathroom, this was their toilet paper. They use natural things, but you can't use it as toilet paper because that can be dangerous. That's the initial assumption of the Gemara. So let's see what it means. Ein shochatin ba'avatanya, but kol shochtin. But didn't we say in the Brisa you can do it? Amra Papa, b'simona daglas. There are 2 different types of reeds. When we say that you can do it, is with a simona. Hold on. Simona da Agma is with the reed of a marsh. Hold on 1 second. Okay, so with the reed of a marsh, that's okay because that's not sharp. The imachatchon babasar, and you know how to chop up meat with it. Rav Papa mechatach bakirvei dagim de zige. Rav Papa would cut up fish innards with it because that you could see if there's a splinter. Rabbi Barhuna mechatach ba ofadrach. Rabbi Barhuna would cut birds or chickens because that's soft. The imachanchaba, you can't use it to clean yourself. Typically, mishum damar mekaneach b'davar shor shaletusbo. Shinav noshros. Why do we have to learn it from this? We have a different teaching. If you clean yourself with something that can burn, that'll cause your teeth to fall out. So Amar Papa kinuach pi maka kamrinan. When Rav Papa said I wasn't talking about washing your. We weren't talking about we weren't speaking of cleaning yourself after the bathroom. We're speaking about cleaning a wood and a wound. You shouldn't do that with a stick. So now the Mishnah says Akol Shochtin or Olam Shochtin. This is the next inyan in the Gemara, which is very significant, but it's a new topic, so we'll stop here. Baruch Hashem. Good Shabbos. Good Shabbos to everybody.
Thank you.
Good Shabbos.